Yuvandat pravichyan amavachimimam prasuptam sanjeevayati vipila shakti dharaswadham anyanscha hastacharana savanattvayani prananama bhagavate purushaya buddhi. So we will discuss this Navadha Bhakti, the ninefold devotion. These kinds of devotional practices are found in all higher religious mystical traditions. Wherever you find, in whichever tradition, great devotees who have transcended the early stages of mechanical convictions and practices, those who have reached the higher levels of inner experience, you can find these practices. So the first is Sravanam. Sravana means, literally it means hearing or listening to. That's what Sravana means. So, in a way what it means is feeding our mind with spiritual ideas. That's the real meaning of Sravanam. Mama bhaktehe mano dattva bhakti mukti pradayinihi kathadehe nitya sammanam kurvan dekadivi muda sirasane tatpanam yad yas Sravanam uchyate. The simple meaning is this: somehow trying to feed our mind with spiritual ideas. So Sravanam literally means hearing. Now, hearing is one way of connecting with spiritual ideas, devotional ideas. It could be reading. Actually, when you read a book, when you read a holy book, a holy scripture, you are actually listening. When you read, it is silent listening. Also, when you remember, then also you are listening. So, musicians may know this better than me, perhaps. You listen to one set of music or one hymn or a few verses. You learned from your music teacher yesterday. Today, mentally, when you remember, you are hearing your music teacher's voice again at mental level. So mind also reproduces all previous experiences. When you saw something yesterday, when you remember, you are seeing it again at the mental level. You may have smelled perfume yesterday. When you think of it, with that memory, that experience also comes back to the mind at the sukshma level, at the mental level. When you remember the taste of some food you ate yesterday, you are actually reliving the previous experience of eating the food. So every kind of memory is a kind of listening again. So our mind is fed with all kinds of food. Some of them are very good, some of them are poisonous. So we cannot just physically throw away unnecessary tendencies, impressions, attitudes from our mind. But you can weaken the existing stock of bad samskaras, bad memories, bad impressions, by increasing the amount of good samskaras. So mind is frequently compared to a bag, full of tendencies, good and bad. Some tendencies are good, may help you in meditating, in living a spiritual life. It may help you when you sit you go to a holy place, for example, or just after listening to some higher ideas, if you just sit for meditation, it perhaps mind is more cooperating. But at other times, mind sometimes is not willing. See, when you watch a TV program, there is no conflict or distraction or disturbance. When you switch on the TV, come back to our own room, when we sit in solitude and try to meditate, try to practice silence, then all the accumulated thought currents, impressions, images, words, all these will come back to the mind again. That's because some set of tendencies, mental food is good, some are bad. So they fight each other. That's why conflicts come. So the only way to weaken negative tendencies is to increase positive tendencies. And Sravanam is the step number 1. First step. So our mind is accumulating a lot of good and bad samskaras. So make some deliberate effort to feed the mind with good spiritual food. That is Sravana. So there are many great examples in these traditions. Parikshit is supposed to be an example of Sravana. I mentioned this story yesterday. Parikshit had only 7 days to live. So he decided to spend the rest of his lifetime feeding his mind with the story of God. And he asked this question to Shuka, the great sage, Ada prachami samsiddhim yoginam paramam gurum purushasya yat karyam riyamanasya sarvada. What should a dying man do? Death is staring at your face. What should we do? So we should try to make preparation for leaving this world with a smile. That is the real purpose. And that's the essence of Shuka's reply. And the whole Bhagavata Purana is an expansion, is an exposition of Shuka's response to the question, how should a person live his or her life if he has only 7 days to live? Sedavan Sankhya Yogabhyam Swadharma Paranishthaya Janmalabha Parapurusam Ante Narayana Smriti. Comes in the first kantha, maybe 17th, 18th chapter. He says, either you do some good actions, dedicating to God, or just think of the absolute reality behind this changing phenomena, or do some devotion practices, so that when you leave this world, you should have the memory of God in your heart and some good ideas in your mind. That's why in the Ishavasya Upanishad, the dying man's prayer, that's the last part of it, Kratam Smara, Kratosmara, oh mind, go back and think of all the good actions you have done. That's how the dying man wants to leave the world. Ante Narayana Smriti. So Parikshit could leave the world with God's memory in his mind. So Parikshit is considered to be a supreme example of Sravana. So the next is Sravanam Kirtanam Vishnu. Kirtana means actually reading hymns, glories of God. There are hymns in all spiritual traditions. So Kritakaze Sampasya Janma Karma Nivaimama. When we love singing and thinking of the glory of God, ritualistic singing also is an important thing. Great music is a royal path to spiritual experience. Every great music, music takes you to a stage where you leave everything behind and you become one with what you are actually singing. So that is also part of this mantra japa, every sacred word symbol is called mantra. Has got 4 levels of dimension. In all prayers also you find. In all great prayers, in all great traditions, there are 4 levels of evolution. In our own spiritual progress, when we listen to great spiritual ideas, when we chant great hymns, first is called, technically in Sanskrit language, called Vaikhari. Vaikhari is one way of loud singing. You have heard many devotional practices which involve loud bubbas singing with big, like boar drums. They make a lot of noise as if God is deaf. You can find that. Very loud voice. So God cannot keep quiet there. But that is not the highest. But that is one way to distract our own mind away from other undesirable loud noises. There are other loud noises which are not so very good, which are big distractions for us from spiritual life, even for peace of mind. So when we want to withdraw ourselves, when we want to withdraw ourselves away from these other loud, undesirable distractions in the form of loud noises, you sing the glory of the Lord in a loud voice. So this is the first stage, called a kirtan. One stage. Then, at the next stage, you may sing, you may do the same japa, you may chant the same holy name, but not so loud. You may hear, but others won't hear. They who watch them. You may hear, but others may not hear. That's a higher form of spiritual practice, of japa. Japa means taking holy name in a broader sense. There are people who repeat these prayers from Bible, from Gita, from the Upanishads, from Bhagavata, from different spiritual traditions. Every great tradition has its own holy word symbols with their practice. So the first stage, very loud. Second stage, loud, but others won't hear. You hear. So, para, pashyati, madhyama, vaikhari. These are 4 stages, the descending order. So, madhyama is the next stage after vaikhari. That is, you hear, but others won't hear. Pashyanti is the third stage where you repeat this holy name, but you don't even articulate it. Naturally goes on in your mind. In fact, that is this topic of discussion in the Way of a Pilgrim. You find many of these ideas articulated differently in different Christian mystical traditions also, depending upon the particular denomination that they belong to. At the highest stage, you become one with the essence of the japa, essence of the king, essence of the sacred word symbol, where you become one with it. That is some kind of an Advaita, non-dualistic experience. That's called para state. So that's called kirtanam. So the third stage is smaranam. So smaranam is an important example. Smaranam and kirtanam are interrelated. Smaranam means actually remembering. So one example of kirtan and smaranam can be Ajamila. So Ajamila is an interesting story in the Bhagavata Purana. The Ajamila is an interesting character. He was born in a good family. His parents brought him up as a God-fearing child, and he was an ideal son, an ideal person in every way. But what happened, during his young days, he had a deviation. So it so happened, the story is very, very, it is very intricate. He happened to have some bad association, and as a result, he fell into bad ways. He became a profligate, he became a rogue, he became a scourge, he became a curse to his own parents. And then he became old. And at that time, he had a son. He was trying to call his son. His son's name was Narayana. So Narayana is one of the synonyms of Vishnu. One of the synonyms of Hindu God, Vishnu or Krishna, Bhagavata Purana says. Narayanam Ayanam means the ultimate spiritual destination of human beings. That is the meaning of Narayana, means God. So, the name that he had given to his own son was Narayana. And that was also the holy name that he used to utter when he was a small boy, when he was trained by his parents, when he was brought up as a God-fearing ideal son. He was actually practicing kirtanam, sravanam, this chanting this holy name Narayana. So when he called his son to his side, he was actually calling not God, but his son. because his mind had become so vitiated, so polluted that he could not bring his mind to calling God. He called his son. But suddenly his mind went back to his own younger days when he was practicing spiritual sadhana, spiritual practices, meditation, taking the holy name or the same name. So immediately Lord Vishnu's servants, messengers came and took him to the holy abode of Vishnu. That's how the story goes. So how does it happen, When he was small, he had done a lot of sravana. He had done a lot of reading scriptures. Suddenly it happens, it could happen when you are young, you are brought up, when later you are posted in some other countries, some other job, lot of obligations, lot of responsibilities, a big CEO, so monitoring the stock market and all that, So what happens, you may not, I won't get much time to do spiritual practices. You are so immersed in this complex, competitive world and its obligations. But suddenly you get some hard blows from somewhere. That's a special grace of God. If God gives you a blow, you should thank Him. You should not curse Him. But that's one way of unificated, one blow on your head, suddenly, you something missing. And actually that's one way of God, very unpleasant way rather, or reminding you that you have actually lost your track. So some people need some very hard blows. Some people may not need such hard blows. In Ajamila's case, what happened, his practices during his younger days had already accumulated in his mind these holy samskaras, good mental food, which came to his rescue accidentally when he was about to leave the world. So that's Najamila is an example of this the Kirtanam and Sravanam both is considered. Ayanki Kranirvesho Janma Ketyam Sahavini Vyajagara Vivasho Nama Sat Satyayanam Hare. So Ajamila, Satyayanam actually means, Ajamila uttered the name of God at time of death. The story goes like that. Ajamila had squandered all his money, destroyed all his wealth, neglected his parents, became a scourge of humanity, because for society, because of his lifestyle. Then death was coming near. So the servants of death, the servants of death came to him. And they were not very good to look at. They were so frightening. He got scared. He cried out. Whom he cried out? His own son's name. And that was a name that he was uttering with great, deep devotion when he was young. Narayana. So mind suddenly went back to his own younger days. This accident. But that means the good samskaras that you accumulate in the mind when you are young, it will not be lost. That's why people sometimes have very interesting ways, accidental ways of reconnecting with their own lost samskaras. It happens like that. In the Gita, there is an interesting dialogue between Lord Krishna and Arjuna. In the 6th chapter, Arjuna asks one question. Suppose you have done a lot of spiritual practices, lot of attending retreats, but still you feel that you have not reached the goal. Does it mean that we should give up our effort? No. What it means is, you should continue. So, ayadi saddhayo pedo yoga charida manasaha aprapya yoga samsiddhim kam gatim Krishna gacchati. So one question is put before Krishna by Arjuna. What should a person do who feels that he has not accomplished the highest goal? In response to this, Lord Krishna says, even the little bit of spiritual practices that you might have done in your life will not be lost. Half an hour meditation, few minutes of meditation, feeding your mind with some higher spiritual ideas, at least for some years, for a short time. That itself will create a spiritual bank balance in our mind. We are born again, suddenly we will be able to reconnect with that lost world coming from previous life. So, Partha Naiveka Namutra Vinasas Tasya Vidyade Nahi Kalyana Krit Kaschit Durgatim Tadavich. Lord Krishna replies, even a little bit of good spiritual practices you have done in your life, that will come to your rescue even after your death. You'll be born again in a family where you'll be able to continue your spiritual journey again. That's why when we go to some places, holy places, suddenly you feel a feeling of, you feel homely there. You feel at home there. What we feel at home, that's our natural habitat. So suddenly, sometimes after listening to some higher talks, we feel a strange attraction. You know what happened to the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna? The author, Yam, is a grand example. Yam was a highly accomplished person, a headmaster, a highly respected figure. I am talking about the chronicler of Sri Ramakrishna's teachings, the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna, author of the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna. His name was Mahendranath Gupta, Yam we call him. He was a prominent person in his own circles, and one day, because of some family problems, he left his home at 10:30 at night, and he was accompanied by his own wife. They were all very good people, highly respected people. But still he was not happy. It seemed that he was planning to commit suicide, put an end to his life, because of family problems. Some highly depressing squabbles within the family settings. And he went and travelled. Finally, he reached his nephew's home, Siddheshwara Majjuda, that was living not far from the Dakshineswara temple, where Sri Ramakrishna was living. After a few days, one day, this nephew who consoled him, who talked to him, and so Yam had already felt a bit fully recovered from his depressive state. And one day, it's a great Paramahamsa, a holy man is living near the temple. Why don't we go there? So they traveled around, and finally in the evening they reached the Dakshineswara temple, the room where Sri Ramakrishna was living, staying and teaching his disciples. Yam just listened for a short time, but that was the beginning of a new life for him. As a result, we got a great world spiritual classic, and we can find Yam felt that he belonged there, belonged to Sri Ramakrishna. He belonged to that place. And he felt an inner compulsion to come back. Maybe his nephew perhaps never returned with him, who actually took him there. He never returned, but he certainly don't hear much about him. But Yam actually he was the headmaster who actually inspired many of Sri Ramakrishna's monastic disciples and who sent them to Sri Ramakrishna. So you can imagine, because he had already acquired, he had already accumulated a lot of spiritual bank balance from previous life. So in this life, a small tragedy, a depressive mental state, and at that time he met Sri Ramakrishna, and he suddenly found that he was a different person. It's like suddenly you get an announcement that your great uncle had deposited $1 trillion in the bank, which you never knew. You were very poor, you thought. Suddenly you get this interesting news. So Yam suddenly got back his spiritual inheritance, because he was himself a great mystic. He must have been a great mystic or spiritual aspirant in his previous life. So that was what enabled him to connect with Sri Ramakrishna and become what he eventually became. So in the Gita it says, Tatpradam buddhi samyogam labhade paurodekikam yadadecha tato bhuyas samsiddhu kurinantana. So whatever good samskaras through Sravana, through Kirtana, through any kind of spiritual practices, you have already accomplished, accumulated in your mental system. That is already there. When you are born again, when you go walk in front of a temple or any holy place or meet a holy person, suddenly you reconnect with your own past spiritual legacy. That's what happened to Ajamila. So Ajamila is an interesting example. A young man who had a good background, who led an ideal life, was a devotee of God, but had a big distraction. He became a slave of his own senses, was lost, and then to the end of his lifetime, accidentally, he reconnects with the holy name that he used to chant during his younger days, and he left this world with God's memory in his mind. All because of Sravana and Kirtana. So, that's why Ayanki Kranveso Janmakotyasam Asamapi Yet Vyajahara Nivesho Nama Sustyayanam Nare. That means having at the time of death, having entered in a mood of total helplessness, the name of the Lord, which actually became a means for liberation, he left this world with God's memory in his mind. So no effort goes in vain. You are never late, and whatever we do is never lost. So that is an interest, that is one very, very moving example of Sravanam, Kirtanam, Smarana. Of course, there are many, many examples, Smarana also, there are many, many great examples. Prahlada is another example. Prahlada could not forget the name of God, the thought of God for any moment. So, Sravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu, Smaranam, Padasevanam. Padasevanam actually means doing some service. Any kind of service doing to this Vedanta society itself. Or any church, or any holy place, or any noble activity in a broad sense. When we do something at a physical level, even cleaning this shrine where people come and listen to these holy ideas, or any place for the matter, like this, any place, church or temple or anything, what we are doing, the humblest bit of physical service accumulates a great spiritual wealth, spiritual potency, which is called samskara. Whatever we do, even the most ordinary physical activity or a thought in mind, its effect is not lost immediately. It leaves a residual effect which is called vritti in Yoga Sutra, Yoga tradition, Patanjali tradition. Vritti becomes a samskara. If a person has done a lot of good actions, or a lot of good thoughts, or spoken a lot of good words, holy words, those activities will create a samskara, because first they become vrittis, and vrittis become a samskara. Samskara means tendency, attitude, impression, natural tendency coming from previous habits. And that samskara becomes a vasana, a strong tendency to do it again if the experience is good. And so what happened is called the karma vritti samskara chakra. A wheel of action, its results, and the results becoming a tendency, and this tendency prompting us again to repeat those good actions. So you cannot just wish away what you have accumulated. So what this verse tells you, Tatradam Buddhi Samyogam Labhade Pavodekikam. In previous life, with the body in previous life, you have already accumulated a lot of good samskaras. Those samskaras will prompt us to continue our spiritual life from where we left in the previous life. Gita, into the same chapter, 6th chapter, tells you, Purvabhyasena denaiva, Kridehi avasopisaha. Means, you are helpless. We have done a lot of good samskaras, so you cannot do anything bad. There are people who may make a strong determination to do some good things, but they cannot do because mind doesn't cooperate, because samskaras are not cooperating. Negative samskaras. And there are some people, well, I will tell a lie, but they cannot tell a lie. When they tell it becomes true because their samskaras are good. So there is always a conflict between what we want to do and what our mind permits us to do. Mind doesn't permit us to do whatever we want to do. Suppose tomorrow we take a decision tomorrow. I read some wonderful books. Tomorrow morning I will start meditation 7 o'clock. At 7 o'clock comes, today an appointment, maybe I will do tomorrow. Or maybe today, perhaps, maybe tomorrow is better day. Our own mind will go for, seek some justification for not doing it. That's some kind of mind playing a trick. Because the mind has got many negative samskaras, unpleasant samskaras. If mind is full of positive samskaras, then it will prompt us, it will help us, it will encourage us to do what we want to do. So, Lord Krishna says, because of samskaras, of good actions, good spiritual practices done in previous life, through sravana, manana, kirtana, smarana, etc., you will not lose anything. We are born with this legacy. So, that's why any kind of Padaseva means divine service. In the broad sense, we should say it is a service that we do for the good of others, for a holy cause. Literal meaning should not be taken here. We should try in the broader sense, it means any kind of holy service. Literal meaning is serving. Serving the feet is literal meaning. What it means is some kind of service we do for the good of others for a holy cause. Whether those for whom we are doing are grateful or not, recognize our service or not, it does a good service to our own mind. It's just like putting a huge deposit in the bank in our day, which won't be lost. Which you can draw the check next life. You are born with a checkbook and fountain pen of previous samskaras. So that is why any physical activity, in a physical activity becomes spiritual energy. That's the beginning, natural beginning of any person. People frequently ask this question. My mind doesn't allow me. Mind is creating conflicts. I cannot meditate. Well, if you cannot meditate, if a person does some good action for some year, for some time, those good samskaras will refine the mind, reprocess the mind, and the whole mind will be restructured, purified, and such a mind will cooperate when we try to meditate. So, that's why the humblest physical service or intellectual service will generate spiritual wealth. It will produce spiritual energy, which will help us to continue our spiritual life. So that is the Padaseva. The next one is Archanam. Archanam actually means worshipping. External worship. External worship is very important. What Bhagavata tells you is external worship is not the end of spiritual evolution. But without some kind of external worship, we cannot begin actually. There is not a single religious tradition anywhere in the world which actually does not practice some kind of external ritual. Look at Buddha, Buddha was an agnostic, who did not believe in a creative God, an anthropomorphic God. But Buddha himself becomes a deity. If you read any books on Mahayana Buddhism, Vajrayana Buddhism, Tibetan order, you find large number of deities. Buddha himself becomes a deity. So it's called Tathagata. Buddha himself is one of the biggest deities the world has ever known in that day. So some kind of external worship is necessary. That's because human beings should start at the physical level. That's why we often make one very serious mistake in Vedanta, when we interpret Vedanta. We frequently interpret Vedanta as a doctrine or a concept. Vedanta is not just a concept, it is an experience. So, this is a gross misunderstanding. If you teach critical purism in a university for some years, you will be called a Kantian. If you teach Jeremy Bentham or J.S. Mill, you will be called a utilitarian. If you give lectures, go about giving lectures on Darwin evolution, you will be called Darwinian. So if you teach Vedanta, you become a Vedantic. No. It's different. It's totally different. Because Vedanta as a concept is only an approximation, is only beginning in our journey towards Vedanta as an experience. So, and experience happens only when our mind begins to change and evolve. A concept doesn't help you to change your mind. You may teach any subject. I can teach Aristotle, I can teach Socrates, I can teach Vedanta, but that doesn't make me a Vedantin, at least. You teach physics, you call a physicist. You teach Vedanta, you are not a Vedantin, necessarily. Not necessarily. Because Vedanta needs an evolution at the mental level. So how do we change our mind? It's a big question actually. A much bigger question if you are any psychiatrist, how to treat phobia, depression, or different kinds of delusions, delusions of reference, delusions of persecution, how to change the mind. Obsessive psychotic problem, neurotic problems, how to solve the problem. Psychological problems do not have a solution at a psychological level, not permanent solution. Psychological problems have a permanent solution only at a spiritual level. You have to go beyond mind, then only you can treat the mind. So, Archana, the external forms of spiritual practices, religious practices, generate tendencies, vasanas, vrittis, and impressions. They change the impressions. A person who goes on doing good work, he cannot be a bad man. A person who goes on speaking bad word or bad deeds, he cannot be a good person. So our physical actions influence our mind. Because physical actions produce tendencies, and these tendencies influence the way we think, the way we act. We cannot detach our mind from the body. So that's why external rituals, which we do with great saddha, with great concentration, will give us a sense of sanctity and sacredness to whatever we do. When we take a flower in our hand, place on the altar, we do that with a great serenity, a sense of sanctity and sacredness. Now, when we do that, our mind becomes focused. Our mind acquires these higher qualities. That's why Kriya Kalapaididameva Yogina Saddhanvida Sadhu Yajanti Siddhaye Bhudendriyanta Karano Vilakshidam Vede Chatantre Cha Taeva Kovidaha. So the real masters of the Vedas and Tantras are those yogis who were prompted by great faith and sincerity, worship the Lord with proper rites and ceremonies, and thereby who accumulated good tendencies which helped them to practice later, reading scriptures, meditating on scriptural meaning like manana and meditation, nididhyasana, etc. So that's why the saddha, the sense of sanctity and sacredness with which we worship the Lord, or any ritual, even reading the scripture, arati, puja, if you do then with great sattha, what happens, it has a subjective effect. And also for those who are witnessing. Now, only Bhagavata reminds us that this is not the ultimate culmination, it's not the ultimate goal. This is the most unavoidable, the most essential and inevitable way to evolve gradually. You have to go to school if you want to go to university. I'm talking about primary school. You have to begin somewhere in the kindergarten. You cannot simply walk into Oxford or Harvard. No. So, these samskaras, these external practices will produce appropriate spiritual samskaras. Or also, as I mentioned, physical services, Pada Seva. Any kind of Seva. Those who, let us say, I've seen in San Francisco, and you can find here also, you may see everywhere, many of these holy places you find, devotees spend long hours for cooking and serving and cleaning. So you find in San Francisco big CEOs, vice presidents of banks and companies, CEOs, they come and sweep the floor in front of us. Now why do they do that? They are not mad. They are very responsible persons, the big responsible professions they are handling. Because by doing that, they feel there's a kind of inner serenity, contentment. They are getting something in return for the service. That's true here also. People who do these services with a sense of sanctity and sacredness, through that they feel they are getting something which is very precious. The richest man, the trillions of money in the bank, has to take tablets, medicine for getting 4 hours of sleep. So what kind of life is that? What kind of success? But you find people who do this kind of services, they get something in their life which the most successful persons, material life, are only trying to get, but they won't get it. So the humblest physical service or rituals will generate spiritual energy, spiritual wealth, which expresses in the form of inner contentment. Contentment is called in Sanskrit Kridakrityada and Kridarthada. You feel, well, I have done something which I felt. I have attained something which I wanted to attain. Now this feeling, this contentment, it brings down the stress level, hypertension comes down, diabetes comes down. If a person can feel a little bit of this inner contentment. And all these, Sravanam, Kirtanam, Smaranam, Padasevanam, all these are so many different ways of generating and producing the spiritual wealth, which in our life expresses in the form of contentment or inner serenity. So we will have interaction for 15 minutes. Okay, thank you. Yeah, please.
You mentioned thoughts at the end of life. When a person's dying, their last thoughts.
Yeah.
In my culture, it's more common for people to confess their sins right before they die.
Yeah.
And it's, as a matter of fact, the priest is there, it's considered a sacrament.
Yeah.
Could you talk about it in general? What should be on our mind when we're dying?
Yeah. When we die, we must have a feeling, well, I have done my best for my own good and as an offering to God. So, of course, there is one major difference in Buddhism and Hinduism. They believe in the doctrine of karma and also in the doctrine of reincarnation. So, in Buddhism and Hinduism, death is only a comma, not a full stop. So, but this confession when confession has a great effect, it helps the person to feel a kind of inner serenity. But we cannot think of God at the last moment if we have not deposited some seed in our mind at some stage in our life. Because otherwise, we can do whatever we want, I confess at the last minute, last day. So that kind of problem is there, So in Vedanta, we have to prepare for leaving this world with a smile on our face, with holy thought in our mind. For that, we should do spiritual practices along with our duties, secular, worldly duties, obligations, etc. You can find such great persons in all traditions also. But some kind of confession exists in Hinduism also. That's why when a person dies, frequently his relatives or near and dear ones will read some scriptures at the time of the person's death. Many of those verses are taken from Bhagavad Gita, which means when this body comes and goes, there is one immortal, living, immortal, eternal, spiritual truth which doesn't die, which is beyond this body. The body comes and goes. It will disappear. But there is something that is eternal, that is immortal, that is a state of bliss. And so those verses, if the dying person listens carefully, it can help him to leave the world with a smile. But in order to fully connect with those ideas, he should have already practiced some spiritual disciplines. Then only he will have a mind that connects with these ideas the last moment. So frequently the thoughts that come to our mind in the last moment, in a way, constitute the totality of the essence of all the thoughts we have done in our life. Because the mind is helpless, body is weak, and all the senses are become extremely weak and helpless, then our natural tendencies will come to the surface. When we are living in this world, we can hide our thought and put up a smile, hi, how are you, fine, fine day, etc. We can do that. When a person is dying, his natural accumulated thought currents will somehow express and come to the surface of the mind. No, you can't. That's why people feel scared. Those who did not believe in God, it happens in California frequently. I talk to doctors who hospice nursing personality. They say that those who did not believe in any religion or God, there's a feeling of terror and fear at the last moment. But those who have done scriptural reading and done some spiritual disciplines, they are not so terribly scared. So, and they frequently request for somebody to come and listen, read out some holy words to them. So that's why at the time of death, what happens? Our mind is totally helpless. Whatever is our natural, spontaneous thought currents in our mind, they come to the surface. Because the mechanism to practice diplomacy will be totally weakened. We cannot hide our real thoughts at the time of death. Because the senses all become weakened. So that's why we must put the seed when we are young. So that's very important. That will somehow influence our life.
In Advaita, since enlightenment is realizing you and Brahman are one, is there really a difference between enlightenment and moksha?
Yeah, and the moksha are the same. The moksha liberation has different levels. There are those who are already liberated even while living in this body. After experiencing moksha liberation, they continue doing their duty for the good of others, The only difference is they won't be shocked or disturbed or overjoyed by what happens to their actions. They will be able to look upon life from a higher perspective. They will be able to look upon their own life as if they are watching a drama. They will be able to act as a witnessing the drama of their own life and the world. So that is a characteristic of it, we call Jivan Mukta. I mean, the one who is liberated even while living in this world. There is another kind of liberation where they are already liberated, but still prarabdha karmas, accumulated karmas are still operating. Their ultimate liberation comes when they leave the body, called Videka. Different instances. Yeah. Any more questions? There are many interesting. Okay, come on.
So you beautifully compared the japa with the way of the pilgrim, and the way of the pilgrim is considered a spiritual classic.
Which one?
The way of the pilgrim.
Yes, it's a spiritual classic, yeah.
And it's actually one of the, at least when I joined, it was on the reading list of the training center.
Yeah.
And so it remains that.
Yeah.
And so this theory of mantra and meditation is strongly embedded in that, and so also the experiences are similar.
Yeah. You find, the pilgrim who was a humble peasant who could just barely read and write a very crude language, he knew Jesus' prayer when he listened to the St. Paul's first episode. He read, in fact the preacher himself didn't bother much about it. He left the church immediately. But this man was completely transformed and he started his journey. He wanted to go to Jerusalem, go to Jeddah first and then Jerusalem. So he already knew the verbal dimension, the word formation of Jesus' prayer he already knew. It was so well known. But he wanted to be in a state of perpetual prayerfulness, which St. Paul was referring to. That's what he wanted to learn. Not the prayer as such, but the art of remaining in a state of perpetual prayerfulness, which means parabhakti, which is spontaneous, natural and effortless. So spontaneity, naturalness and effortlessness, which signify that he has become one with it. So that's what he wanted to learn, and he was trained by the Russian Orthodox monk in his cell. And when he learned it, you can find he expresses his opinion, his feelings. He felt a great joy, he felt a great compassion and love for all humanity. You find identical expressions in Prahlada's own experience. Prahlada was a little child, those of you are unfamiliar, I shall explain. His father was up to no good, so to speak. Was a demon, a monster. He specialized in doing all the terrible things for which he would be penalized by any constitution in the world. And his son was such a wonderful devotee. That's because when the child was still in his mother's womb, a great sage came and taught Prahlada the story of Vishnu. In fact, Narada himself was the author of Narada Bhakti Sutra. So he himself came, this great saint and devotee philosopher, came and taught Prahlada. And his mother, though her husband was a demon, mother listened to this with great devotion. So when Prahlada was born, he was already a great devotee. And his mind naturally went to the thought of God, just as what happened when you pour oil from one vessel to another vessel. It's very thick, there will be no break. If you pour water, there will be break. So his mind naturally flowed to God, as Tailadhara means the flow of oil from one vessel to another vessel. So he could not think of anything other than God. He could not bring himself to a lower level. So it was so natural to him. So sometimes he will cry, sometimes he will weep when he feels that God is not nearby, he will cry when he feeds. The God is nearby, he will be overjoyed. Then also he will weep with joy, of course, tears of joy. So, if you compare the expressions of the pilgrim when he learned the art of remaining in a state of perpetual prayerfulness, this is Prahlada. There are many identical words. That's what I want to try to do. That means when you break the barriers of conventional ritualistic levels and become one with the highest devotional experience, then because experience is identical for every devotee. That's what we find. One is a total identification with the whole creation. That's what the compassion, love, and joy. That's what. One of the essential characteristics of a true devotee of God is joy. So in the 12th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, when Lord Krishna gives a list of the essential characteristics of an ideal devotee, Santushta Sadham Yogi Yadatma, when he says Santushta means always in a state of serenity and blissfulness, not satisfaction. It is only empirical experience. Inner serenity and contentment. That is an important characteristic of a great devotee. If a devotee claims I am a devotee of God, is miserable and unhappy, is an insult to God. A devotee of God should be happy. That's good name for, good reputation for God. So that's why the first important characteristic of an ideal devotee is santushta, means always inner joy and contentment.
Swami Prabhavanand wrote a book called Bhagavatam, the Wisdom of God.
Yeah.
Is that just a commentary on Bhagavatam or is that a complete version of Bhagavatam?
Bhagavatam is a much bigger book.
Yeah.
Swamiji was trying to,
It's a for Westerners in particular. The essence of particularly Westerners.
Yes. So thank you. Om Shanti 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 Hari Om Sri Ramakrishna Pranastu.